The first time I saw him, he was dancing in the dark. Not in a way that begged for attention, but like he was trying to remember something. Eyes closed, headphones in, a quiet defiance to everything around him. He moved like the world didn't quite fit, but the music did. It wasn't the kind of thing you were supposed to stare at, but I did. His name was Rowan. And I didn't know it yet, but loving him would teach me more about grace, pain, and presence than anything life had before. We met in the corner of a too loud party. He was pressed against the wall, drawing galaxies on a paper napkin. I told him I liked his shoes. He told me I reminded him of a dream he once had about a girl who walked through fire but never looked afraid. That was Rowan, always one sentence away from poetry or unraveling. He had rituals, always wore 2 mismatched socks, never sat with his back to the door, walked the same block 3 times before entering his building. He had a way of making ordinary things feel sacred, but there were days he drifted, emotionally, mentally, like he was halfway between this world and another. Sometimes he wouldn't speak for hours, or he'd whisper to someone who wasn't there. His eyes would fix on something just past my shoulder, his smile faltering. When I asked, he would say it's just noise. I try not to let it get too close. I didn't run, I leaned in. He told me early on, schizophrenia, diagnosed at 24. He spoke about it without shame, but with the weight of someone used to watching people walk away. I listened, not because I pitied him, but because I wanted to understand the map of his mind. Some days were beautiful. We'd lay on the floor, tracing cracks in the ceiling like constellations. He'd read me passages from books he never finished, or paint versions of me as birds, flowers, light. He told me I made the voices quieter, that when I laughed, even the shadows paused to listen. But there were also the other days, the hard ones. Like the night I found him sitting on the kitchen floor, trembling, tears streaking his face. They said I shouldn't trust you. He murmured, they said you'd leave like the rest. I sat down beside him, pulled him into my arms and whispered, then let me prove them wrong. Trust was something we built slowly. He let me see the journal he kept, filled with fragments, thoughts, memories, messages from the noise. Some pages were scribbled over in black ink, others held delicate drawings of our hands intertwined, or his name spelled out again and again as if anchoring himself to something real. I learned how to meet him where he was, learned what kind of quiet he needed, what kind of reassurance worked when logic. Didn't I stop trying to pull him out of the darkness and instead learn to sit with him in it, and over time it softened. He never asked me to be a savior. He asked me to stay, and I did. There were late nights where I'd read him back to sleep. Mornings where I'd remind him gently what was real. We'd leave the windows open so he could hear the wind. He said it reminded him that the world kept moving, even when his thoughts tried to freeze. One day, after 3 years of laughter, tears, and every beautiful, hard thing in between, Rowan brought me to the rooftop of the building where we first kissed. It was early spring. The sky was bruised with clouds. He handed me a drawing, his latest. It was us, 2 silhouettes sitting side by side, wrapped in light, surrounded by shadow, but the shadows weren't menacing, they were listening, held at bay. At the bottom, in small, imperfect handwriting, he had written, "You didn't save me, you just saw me, and that was enough." I turned to him. Breath caught Rowan. He didn't say anything, he just reached for my hand and held it like it was the most solid thing in the world. And in that moment, I knew. Love isn't perfect, it's not always pretty, it doesn't fix everything or erase pain. But sometimes it gives us the courage to stay, to see someone completely, and still choose to be there every day, every storm, every fragile sunrise. And that kind of love, that's the kind that lasts.
When I met Micah, it felt like opening a door I hadn't realized I'd kept locked. We were 2 strangers in the same cafe, stuck beneath the same broken heater on a February afternoon. I offered him the other half of my croissant. He offered me a seat and a story about how all first meetings are really just old souls reuniting. It was ridiculous. And I stayed. He was a writer. Messy-haired, soft-eyed, all nerves and wit. I was cautious, steady, a little worn around the edges. We were nothing alike, but somehow, we fit. Our love didn't explode. It unfolded slowly, a hand brushing against mine, a journal left open on my desk with poems circled and underlined, long walks where he talked about ghosts and galaxies. And I talked about anything to keep him grounded. Micah had a way of making everything feel cinematic. Even our arguments ended with him scribbling something beautiful in the margins of an old notebook, something he'd read back to me with a trembling smile. But then there was Jamie. I met her 6 months in at a dinner Micah invited me to. I thought she was his ex at first, the way she leaned into him, laughed too loudly at his jokes. But he introduced her with a strange tenderness. "This is Jamie," he said. She's important to me. She was magnetic. Sharp eyes, rich voice, a kind of confidence that made you want to orbit her. I told myself I was just being insecure, that Micah loved me, that whatever history they had, it was over. And then I started seeing the gaps. Late-night text shifts in tone when her name came up. A painting Micah had started with a figure that looked like her, not me. He never lied, but he never said the whole truth either. One night, I asked quietly, directly, "Are you still in love with her?" He didn't answer at first, just stared at his hands. Then he said, "I never stopped. I felt like the air had been knocked out of me." "But I love you too," he added, almost helplessly. "It's not about choosing." I thought it was I needed it to be. I left that night without slamming the door because I didn't want to give him anything he could turn into a poem. We didn't speak for weeks. And then Jamie showed up at my door. I thought I'd yell or cry or slam the door the way I hadn't before, but instead, I listened. She told me they tried before, she and Micah, that it never quite worked, but never fully ended either, that she thought maybe with me in the picture, it could be something better. "You love him," she said, "so do I. But maybe we don't have to keep tearing him in half." I laughed, disbelieving, angry, intrigued. "I'm not asking you to change who you are," she added. "I'm just asking if there's a world where we could try." I told her no, because I couldn't imagine sharing something that fragile, something I'd just started to believe was truly mine. More weeks passed. I saw Micah once across the street, his coat too thin for the wind. He didn't come over, just looked at me like he still had 1,000 things left to say. Months later, I got a letter. Not from him, from Jamie. Inside was a photo of the two of them smiling in soft morning light. Not perfect, but honest. Below the photo, in her neat handwriting, she'd written, "He's better now. So am I. You were the missing piece, even if you didn't stay." I cried. Not out of regret, not because I wanted him back, but because I had loved him in a way that taught him how to love someone else better. And sometimes that's the part we don't talk about. Sometimes you're not the ending. You're the rewrite.
I always thought love would feel like lightning, fast, obvious, loud. But when I met Ava, it was more like standing in warm sunlight after weeks of rain. She was late to a meeting I wasn't supposed to be at, dropped her coffee, cursed under her breath, and apologized 3 times before even looking up.
But when she did, it felt like something important had just shifted. We became friends first quietly, naturally. The kind of friends who texted each other memes at 1 a.m. and cried on rooftops about things we couldn't say out loud during daylight. Ava was fire in slow motion, bold and brilliant and terrifyingly vulnerable. I fell for her in stages, each one deeper than the last. She didn't make it easy. She was all walls and warning signs, but I learned how to stay, how to be soft where she was sharp. 6 months in, we kissed. It wasn't planned, it wasn't even talked about, it just happened, like a truth finally catching up with us. She laughed after nervous beautiful. I don't do relationships, she warned me. Okay, I said, but can we do this? And so we did. We didn't label it. We didn't post about it. It was ours, tucked into stolen hours and forehead kisses and holding hands under bar lights, and I was happy. Until Ethan. He was Ava's ex. Or so I thought. I met him on accident when I came over one night and found him curled up on her couch, barefoot and casual, like he'd always belonged there. He stood up, extended a hand. So you're the one. The one what? I asked. Ava walked in, holding 3 mugs of tea, like this was normal. I watched her carefully. She didn't look surprised, just hopeful. Okay, she said, so I didn't plan this right. That's when she told me the truth. She never stopped loving him, not really, but they were toxic once, and they needed space to unlearn the damage. The time apart helped, and now slowly, gently, they were trying again. But then I met you, she said, looking right at me. And I don't want to choose, because what I have with you is different, but it's real. I stared at her. Then at him, then at the space between us, and something strange happened. I didn't feel betrayed. I felt seen, confused, sure, but also curious. A little afraid, a little excited. We talked, the 3 of us, for hours about boundaries, about fear, about love. Ethan wasn't what I expected. He was quiet, thoughtful, a little broken in the way. Ava was too, like they were once 2 storm fronts that finally learned how to let the rain fall gently. I said I needed time, and they gave it to me. Weeks passed. I missed her. I missed them, even though I hadn't had him yet. I thought about the way she lit up differently around each of us, how her laugh changed, how mine did too. And then I said yes. Not to a label, not to a structure, just to trying. The first few months were awkward. We stepped on emotional landmines we didn't know were there. There were tears, doubts, but there was also laughter. Deep conversations at 2 a.m. Sunday mornings spent tangled in sheets and silence. 3 toothbrushes, 2 coffee mugs, always full, one love that felt both terrifying and holy. People didn't understand, we didn't expect them to. This wasn't about being provocative. It was about being honest. We didn't make it a year. Ava got a job in another country, one she couldn't turn down. Ethan's mother got sick. I got accepted into a writing program across the country. Life suddenly and unceremoniously split us into 3. We cried. We promised things. We kissed each other goodbye like we were burning the moment into memory. And now I'm here on my own again, but different. Because for a while I loved 2 people at once and was loved back just as fully, and it didn't break me. It remade me. Love, I've learned, doesn't always fit into the boxes we're given. Sometimes it spills over. Sometimes it becomes something you can't explain over dinner with your parents or in a status update. But that doesn't make it less real. It just makes it yours.